Well, as Democrats battle it out for a third of the delegates needed to secure the nomination, many of the 14 states participating in Super Tuesday today have a strong evangelical voter base. I do now want to bring in the executive director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Timothy Head, to talk about this more. Hi, Tim. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
When we look at the states that are part of Super Tuesday, where we will see, of course, where will we rather see the largest influence of evangelical voters today?
Well, clearly when a state like Texas is one of the two biggest states in play today, and that has a huge population of faith-based voters, a lot of evangelicals and certainly a lot of faith-based Catholics as well. But then you also have states like Arkansas and Oklahoma and Alabama, quite a few of the so-called SEC states that have heavy evangelical constituencies.
Ahead of today, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar did drop out of the race and chose to endorse Biden. And those endorsements for Biden happening in Texas, notably yesterday. Many people, including President Trump, have said this appears to be an effort by the DNC to block Bernie Sanders from getting the nomination. How much could that help Biden today, coming off his big win in South Carolina?
That's a great question, and obviously I think that's what has most people on the edge of their seats. The biggest state today is California, and Bernie Sanders has a pretty substantial lead there. But the reason why Biden actually had the announcement of all of those endorsements in Texas is because that's kind of where the second tranche, biggest tranche, is coming from for potential delegates. I think that you will see Biden perform well. It's clear that he has kind of salvaged or extended his race a little bit, but the big X factor, of course, today is when Michael Bloomberg has not competed whatsoever in any state, and today he's competing heavily. So can Biden's momentum also compete on the ground with Bloomberg? I think that's what a lot of us are waiting to see.
With more than 1,300 delegates up for grabs today, how much of a prediction could the results be for who will be the Democrat nominee facing President Trump in November?
Well, I wouldn't quite go so far as to say a prediction, but a strong indicator no less. So again, California is with over 400 delegate votes being indicated today. Texas with well over 200. I would say that in order to manage or to perform in a cross-sectional primary day like today, not only are you winning delegates, but you're also proving truly to a national audience that you can compete simultaneously coast to coast in all constituencies and all demographics and all time zones. And so I would say that we will probably come out with 3 candidates that are still alive, so to speak, in this, in Bloomberg, Biden, and Sanders. But I don't think that you can quite go so far as to say the winner is going to be determined tonight.
One interesting thing to note about this year's Super Tuesday is that California is part of Super Tuesday this year. California's primary used to be held much later in June, but moving up in this election cycle, how much of a difference does that make for candidates in this race versus previous races like 2016?
Well, it's an enormous difference. The variable that goes into winning, at least performing well, if not winning in a day like this, is who is actually competing, what states are competing on a day like this. So 4 years ago, Texas moved its primaries up in the cycle because it had typically been left out of the media circus, if you will. And California basically did a little bit of homework in the last election cycle and realized, not only from a financial perspective, just for the kind of political and media outlets of that state, but California also realized we could be the difference maker and shape the narrative. And so you actually have seen a number of the reason why Michael Bloomberg, for instance, could even consider getting into a state like this is because he knew that in order to buy into a state like California, that necessarily was going to preclude some lesser funded candidates. So it actually, the process really becomes a highly influential variable that I think most people tend to kind of undervalue.
All right, Tim Head, the executive director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, joining us to talk about Super Tuesday as voters in 14 states head to the polls. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.